Philip Flores Jr. is the founder and CEO of Cremation by Water, which is a Chicago area organization that's a bit of a pioneer in the field of alkaline hydrolysis, more commonly known as aquamation or water cremation. With a lifelong passion for environmental conservation, Philip has woven sustainability into the fabric of his career and community service. He serves as a commissioner for the Arlington Heights Environmental Commission, a trustee for the Wheeling Township Arlington Heights Cemetery, and president of the Lake McHenry chapter of Continuity of Care. That is a mouthful. Philip, welcome to the Dying to Know More podcast. It's so nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, so let's dive right in. You founded Cremation by Water in 2020. Tell us a little bit about that and your background that led you to that, especially during a pandemic, no less.
Great question. And you know what? I first read the white paper for this about 36 years ago. It's interesting because it's not new. Technically, alkaline hydrolysis, that's the technical name for this, really rolled out in the late 1800s, but it was done vastly differently. It wasn't used what we do today from a modern perspective, which is using temperature, stainless steel, doing things cleaner and a little bit more efficient. And really, the premise behind this was how do we take medical waste and instead of incinerating it, converting it into a sterile gray water? That's how this all began. And so, of course, there's always a small pilot process that takes place. Think about the Apollo mission. When they first launched rockets, they didn't place humans in there, right? They started with chimpanzees. They came back down. They had a simple checklist. They're living, check, good. They responded to their name, cognitive abilities, good, right? I'm oversimplifying, but we kind of get how things get launched and introduced into the community because it requires special approvals, right? So, especially with something as it relates to end of life. And so that's the first time I read about it. But I remember running across an article about alkaline hydrolysis by a manufacturer who has a trademark Aquamation. It's also known as water cremation or a green cremation. But in essence, it's using the basic of water, what water normally does. When you break down hydrolysis is really just using water to break down to the basic building blocks of who we are. That's how I first learned about it. And I wanted to make sure that we can implement a difference because how we leave matters for families and doing things that just feels better makes sense. And I wanted to do this for my own personal pets. And I wanted to make sure that I could do this as well as for myself when I passed on. Hence, I started Cremation by Water Group. We have a human division and we have a pet division.
So, and that kind of was one question I had. So was it originally intended for pets and then humans it was used on them? And so, and also it's not approved for use in all 50 states at this point. Is that right?
Yeah. So, yes. And let me start off with your very first question there. So, it was originally started for humans, right? But like anything else, you have to start off on the animal class first. And it turned into something that wasn't originally anticipated, which is a fantastic solution for our furry four-legged family members, right? And so that took place. Later on, about a decade and a half later, is when it was first getting adapted by the Mayo Clinic in 2006 for humans that donated their bodies to science, and then for funeral industry adapted it in 2011 across the country. So, but to your point, only 28 states do this, which means that it's not the states are challenging this. States, when they approve something, it takes a while before they have protocols in place, right, to police the process. And so you have 28 states that currently do it, but we are fortunate that we see families that come from surrounding states to our facility because of what we do.
And so do you foresee additional states? I mean, do they have to apply for certificates of need, or I mean, what does that process look like to get it in a state that may not have it yet?
Yeah, so great question. So, is the states that when I made that reference to the states, that was on the human side, right? Really, every state could do this for pets.
Right.
And it's just a matter of, do they have it? Do they have, as far as business owners, the capital infrastructure to apply to go ahead and do this? Because certainly the get started process is more expensive than would be, let's say, for a flame cremation or retort. And
Okay.
so, but instead of working with emissions going into the air, you're still
Hmm.
working with the EPA, but you're dealing with the water reclamation area, which is a
Gotcha.
subset of the EPA, making sure what's going back out, because the discharge can either go directly into the ecosystem because
Hmm.
this is a nutrient rich end water process, or it can go down the drain depending on the municipality of where you're at. Because if you're in a
Yeah.
high concentration area, they're probably going to require you to send it to the water reclamation area. But the water
Gotcha.
reclamation area actually likes this sterile output water that goes out because they're not necessarily chemically treating water like they currently
Okay.
do today.
Okay. So, well, let's get into it. So, what exactly is water cremation? Like, walk us through the process, start to finish, how it works, machinery,
Great.
chemicals, anything like that.
I love it. So the number one question is, what is it? How does it work? And why is this important? And
Right.
so water cremation is really taking water and salt. It could be potassium hydroxide. When you mix it together, it creates alkalinity. But I guess before I get started, maybe I should start off with, what is the power of water? Have you ever noticed when you take a super long shower, your fingers start to get pruny, right? Or
Yeah.
this could be a
Yeah.
bath. And
Yeah.
that's because we've got our skin is very permeable and water leaves our body. Well,
Mhm.
about 20 minutes once we're done with our shower or bath, the moisture in the air returns that water back into our body, right? So
Mhm.
that's the power of water. But, over decades, what has water done? It goes down rivers, streams, it makes rocks that are hard, smooth. It's
Mhm.
just a natural way of breaking down things over a period of time. And our
Mhm.
process is doing the exact same thing with water and salt. So what it does is we create alkalinity, which helps accelerate that natural process that happens if a person were to do a green burial, bury their pet in their backyard, right? And it just takes Mother Nature years, sometimes decades, before you can repurpose that ground to, let's just say, grow a tomato bush, right? And
Mhm.
so we're doing it with water cremation or alkaline hydrolysis in hours instead of it taking that long period of time.
Okay.
What do we have left once we're done with this process? It's
That's what
the absolute gorgeous, beautiful bone structure. As a matter of fact, it's like going to any field type of museum where you see dinosaur bones, um,
Okay.
except they're beautiful, light in color, and they're very fragile from this process because the water gets absorbed into the bones, making them soft. After a period of drying or dehydration, they're converted into a fine powder. And what family members get back is something that looks like a bag of flour, light in color,
Oh,
fine in
wow.
texture, right? When you compare it to a flame cremation, there's some distinct differences, right? But
Okay.
what's universal across this process is families will get back about 20 to 30% more with a water cremation process over a flame cremation process.
Why is that?
And this is the equivalent of fertilizer. Why is that? Great
Yeah.
question. Well, when we think about flame, we think about emissions, right? So fire creates exhaust. So you lose the reason why a flame cremation has to be so gosh darn warm, 1800 degrees, is
Yeah.
because it's creating sterility, right? But with sterility and flame, you've got exhaust that goes through the air. And with this process, there is no emission. So therefore, you get back that much more. The larger the pet, that's about 20% you get. The smaller the pet, you get about 30% more back with this process.
Okay. And which one was the one you said was fertilizer?
It's
The
the water cremation process is fertilizer, right?
Okay.
Whereas with a flame cremation, it has a high concentration of sodium. So this needs to be diluted. So if you wanted to scatter ashes, right? Most people think about this as a great memorial. It's
Yeah.
important to make sure that you dilute this with, let's just say, 4 parts dirt to 1 part um, ash cremated remains.
Okay.
Versus with water cremation, this is truly the equivalent of fertilizer. There is no dilution required. You can plant
Interesting.
this, have a tree, bush. There's companies out there that actually do this for families like Tribute. which is
Yeah.
kind of awesome because it's an option for families to memorialize in inside their house with a plant and or even
Yeah.
outdoors.
So going back to the question about your background, I mean, you clearly have an environmental drive or interest in environmental conservation. Um, what was your background prior to cremation by water? I mean,
It was biochemistry, right?
okay,
And so my background, also take it a step forward, was I didn't go to med school, but I got accepted into med school.
okay,
And in a roundabout ways, I did a few other things within the military, which afforded me a chance to go ahead and do those great things that I enjoyed immensely. And
mhm,
but this was really a launching pad for doing something that I thought was going to change the way people think about their end of life.
yeah,
And I wanted to do something that was more meaningful, but I also wanted to take an opportunity to teach lessons to my children while they were young, that they can
yeah,
do anything they wanted as long as they focused on it. So it just happened to all marry together, and at the end of the day, provides our community with something that they really, really look for and are seeking and can't find, which
yeah,
was exactly me as I thought about what happens with my pet's own end of life, or even myself, my end of life. How
yeah,
do I want to go? So,
yeah. So let's talk cost. How does Aquamation rank in terms of compared to uh, regular
a transgender flame
flame
cremation.
cremation?
Yeah. So I'm
Or
gonna
any kind of burial?
yeah, I'm going to approach it from two perspectives, right? Because
Okay.
families, or let's just say cremation in general, um, families may work with their local veterinarian office to euthanize a pet, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so if they go that route, then that veterinarian office is typically outsourcing the cremation to somebody else, right? So
Hmm.
it could be a flame cremation, it could be a water cremation. But families also have the option of having their pets euthanized and going directly to the crematory. And there's lots of reasons for why families do it. But the most popular is for family members, it's that final journey that they can go ahead and take their beloved pet to the final end state, right? And
Hmm.
it brings closure to families when they get to see a facility, right? Especially if the facility has a large window that looks into their, in our case, hydrolysis care center.
Hmm.
Because transparency is important for family members.
Yeah.
And so this brings them closure. Nothing wrong with going through your vet office, but for some families, it's just closure. Costs.
Hmm.
The cost really depends on the path family members take. So
Okay.
there really is parity taking place between a flame cremation and a water cremation. Sometimes you see flame higher and or you see water higher. But when I say higher, we're really talking about probably nothing more than $10 or $20, right? In either direction. It just really depends on maybe a zip code of where people are operating because of the taxation in their local area. But I'd say that it's comparable across the board what the cost
Okay.
is.
Okay. All right. And so do you see an increase in not only awareness of but interest in this as an end of life option for people? I feel like I'm here. I mean, I'm not even in the industry in that way, but it's like I'm hearing an increase of interest or people going, "Have you heard about Aquamation?" Like, are you seeing that? And
Yeah,
um
so without a doubt, yes, there's more awareness taking place within communities because families have a desire to maybe do something different. But what's
mhm,
changed, right, over the course of the
right.
last, call it 30 years, right? We've got the internet. That's number one.
That's true.
You've
Yeah.
got people doubling down on social media, right?
Mhm.
Podcasts, videocasts, blogs are really helping people connect and understand what's out there. So I'm not saying that it's restricting people picking up a book and reading, but the way we learn has changed, and the accessibility to information has really revolutionized why people are making more informed decisions in what they do. And so now people can do this without even having a conversation. So when they do have a conversation, they are well informed, and
Mhm.
they know exactly what to ask for. Not that there's still not a learning path, because I can tell you that most people that call me, they're like, oh, I saw this video, I know exactly how it works. And then when we get through our conversation, they're like, wow. this is amazing. I had no idea. I have a whole new profound appreciation. But as it relates to end of life, because that's the root of your question, what do we have today? Before, people just used to know about flame cremation
Hmm.
and burial, right?
Right.
These days, you can actually do green burials because more and more places are doing that closer than they used to be. You used to have to
Right.
travel far away. If you're rural, completely different story. But if you're in a
Yeah.
dense population, that makes a difference, right? But you can do that a lot closer. Even township cemeteries are even having areas that they carve out for green burials for pets, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes families choose this route, going water cremation. And then there's
Hmm.
something else out there that's known as natural organic reduction, not necessarily something it's being done for pets, but they're not far off from doing it, because if they're doing it for humans, it's just a
Yeah.
matter of time. So knowing that families have 4 to 5 options makes a huge difference for people.
Yeah.
And they end up choosing something that just feels better for them. Because
Hmm.
really, it's not so much the process is really important, and how we leave matters. But if I have the ability of taking my loved one and converting them into blown glass artwork, right? Having a little bit of cremated remains, that's huge for families.
Yeah.
Another aspect of what people tend to do is they can go ahead and take their pets and convert them into solidified stones, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, what a great way to remember someone, right? And
Yeah.
this can be kept indoors, it can be kept outdoors. Families also have an option if they want to go the route of a traditional, let's just say, cemetery. They can
Hmm.
go ahead and carry their pet's memory on with something like this, which is known as Life's QR. It's a company that goes ahead and makes sure that people have a memory and video recordings, and pictures
Uh,
can get uploaded. These are just small
yeah.
tokens of things that families can choose to go ahead and do to memorialize their loved ones. And that, depending on what the end result looks like, will
Yeah.
determine what that next step may look like for them, for their family, or plant a tree.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, what's the ratio of humans to pets that you do?
Oh, great question. So let's stop and think about the longevity of a life, right?
Yeah.
The
I
median
guess that
age for a
that
human,
makes
right, is a
yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah. Yeah.
longer, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I mean, what used to be 82 seems to be a lot older, right, these days. But
Yeah.
when you think about our poor pets, right, depending on their size, we're talking about 10 to 14, 16 years, right?
Yeah.
So you're certainly going to see a lot more pets coming
That
through
makes sense.
than you certainly do see on the human side.
Gotcha. All right. Well, what's like the most important thing you think people should consider when they're looking at their options? I mean,
Thanks for bringing that question
what's
up.
your elevator pitch to go to the mat on Aquamation?
You know, when you're thinking about this beloved pet, because the trade-off for this unconditional love is them passing away.
Hmm.
Whether you want the remains back or you don't, think about how you want them handled at that end of life stage, right?
Hmm.
Communal cremations inherently are several pets, right? I
Hmm.
hate to say this, but on top of each other, because that's the process, as a family doesn't want them back. But families don't have to go with that, even if they don't want their pets' remains back. They can
Yeah.
choose to have them in individual, isolated compartments. And that seems more respectful for families. So I challenge families to think about all this love they've had from their pet. How do you want them to actually go? And then the next thing is to think about, if you had to pay things forward, right? Do something that you think just feels right to you, right? I
Hmm.
think it's important that in this day and age, we take into consideration the climate change that takes place. Some people still don't believe in global warming, but my goodness, winter isn't really getting started until February, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we have to take some actions that are earth friendly, and families should take a look at those options just because it helps leave a better legacy for the future. And along the way, it just feels better when you look at something that looks very light in color and fine in texture. So if
Right.
it gives you closure, that's what people should consider,
Okay. For people as well as pets.
as well as for humans as well.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. All right. Well, so I have two questions left that I ask everyone. So, since you've been doing this work, what has been the most memorable or transformative experience you've had?
So I personally have about 290 conversations per month with people. That's just me. Does not include the rest of my staff, and that doesn't
Okay.
include presentations. The most meaningful aspect of this for me is helping families feel like they can make informed decisions. So that's number one.
Hmm.
The second thing is providing the education for families to go ahead and better prepare and plan for what they want for the future in a sales-free environment.
Hmm.
So I have seen people flock to our tours that we host. We do them 3 times a month where they get to
Oh,
digest and hear about everything, not
okay.
just a water cremation, but to help people get past, maybe debunk some bad rumors that are out there or misconceptions, and help people think clearly and know what plans they should take into consideration. Whether they're using our service or not, I'm indifferent. I just
Right.
want people to be more informed.
What sort of feedback are you getting from families who have chosen this for either their pet or their person?
Oh, you know what? That's a fantastic question. We get a lot of reviews from family members. We get a lot of personal notes. We
Hmm.
can't see them in the background. I have an entourage of letters and notes that get mailed to us from family members, and it's
Hmm.
not necessarily like a week later, right? These are thoughtful messages that people will send to us sometimes a month later, a year later, saying, I was going through a really tough time. Not only did you help make me feel better about a process when you were educating me.
Hmm.
But you also helped provide me with grief support because that's another part of this that's critically important, right? We
Hmm.
all grieve differently. And, I ran across somebody at the Parting Paul. They do a fantastic job. Have you ever heard of them?
Mm-mm.
So they do grief support. They have
Okay.
TikTok videos. They have it's a telephone call where you can actually speak to the founder, but
Hmm.
it's a source for individuals to help get past that tough time that they're going
Hmm.
through. So whenever I see those, that is without a doubt the most rewarding aspect of what I do. I'm not working if I'm doing this and making people feel better. That's my reward with what we do.
Well, I think the fact that you do so much education and outreach, which clearly you do, you came with your props and everything. I think that that's the nature, that's human nature, is to fear what you don't know. And so, what a gift you're doing by educating people, so that then they can feel empowered to know, you know, what their options are. Because I don't think anybody probably is educating people on, flame cremation and things like that. So kudos to you. All right, last question. Are you afraid to die? Why or why not?
No, because it's inevitable, right? We're all going to die.
Yeah.
So, for myself personally, if I were to, and I tell my family this, never ever, I do not want a funeral, right? In other words, I don't want a wake service because it's fair enough to say that never, ever, ever will someone say you look better today than you did 10 years ago, right? So I do not want to be on display.
Yeah.
Secondly, um, we're all going to go. It may be a
Yeah.
surprise, but the little things that we can do to prepare for ourselves. We can choose to write our own obituaries, right? We can
Yeah.
choose to orchestrate what we want to get carried out, and you can, of course, leave some gray areas. But for me, it's a matter of removing the burden. From anybody else so they can grieve, but tell them what I want them to do with my ashes. And for me, I want to be scattered. I want a water cremation, and I want to be scattered 2 miles off the west of Hawaii, the west coast.
Okay.
And I'm
All right.
convinced that one of my kids is going to say, the wind is blowing from the west to the east. No way, old man. They're going to dump me to the side, and I'll still have the last laugh. So, I'm
Yep.
not saying I want to transition anytime soon, but when
Right.
it happens, right? It's
Yep.
part of
Yep.
life.
Yep. Well, Philip, thank you so much. It's been very enlightening. Listeners, I will add all of Cremation by Water links and social handles in the show notes. Philip, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time and your expertise you've shared.
Ashley, thank you for what you do. Getting the word out is important. I appreciate it.
Episode of Dying to Know More, be sure to give it a like and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode.